From the moment I played the first episode, the coffin of Andy and Leyley hypnotised me with a force that video games hadn't made me feel in a long time. It was a bold exploration of very complicated themes, and its wicked charm and beautiful honesty were only elevated with the release of the second chapter. By that point, these characters were fleshed out until they became larger than life, and the game itself had evolved into a cultural event. But if there's one thing I missed about the original game over episode 2, it was the more overt sense of horror. That's why I'm glad that episode 3A is a violent course correction. It swings back hard into psychological horror by unleashing a perfect escalation of the previous chapter's themes. From its litany of endings to its sickening tragedies and to the unrepentant deconstruction of its protagonist, 3A accomplishes everything I wanted it to and is without question Nemley's greatest work yet. By accelerating Andrew's hypocrisy, delusions, and need for control, this third installment subjects the Graves siblings to the types of dread rarely depicted in games. Rightfully subtitled Decay, this is the episode that exposed Andrew Graves. Here's how. Andrew has been a very strange character since the beginning. As a confused patchwork of guilt, repression, and a warped sense of duty, he's a natural magnet for unhealthy coping mechanisms. In his case, every misfortune and misgiving is fuel for his ego as he switches between victim and savior. And episode 3A wastes no time in establishing that we're going to be sitting with that mess. This game will actually have two distinct episode 3s based on your choices in the second chapter. Episode 3A for the Decay route and 3B for the burial route. But while 3A continues from episode 2's Decay ending, the player doesn't immediately get to see the aftermath of the previous chapter's fallout. No, we're instead thrown into an hour-long flashback to a turning point from Andrew's childhood. Now, deliberately pausing the story after such a dramatic ending is something most authors wouldn't wish on their worst enemy. But Nemley is a genius who makes it work, because this ain't just fluff. This flashback enhances the pacing, as it lays out the themes Decay is going to tackle and shows us how Andrew became who he is from his perspective. And so the flashback begins with an eerie trek through young Andy's mind, and I love everything about this initial dream sequence. The hollow music is cold, and the insane set pieces are excellent imagery. It perfectly communicates how powerless Andrew felt in the face of one of the most damaging lessons his mother taught him: to make appearances. It's also here where 3A instantly flaunts its greater emphasis on puzzles. The very first one is a series of route planning problems where Andrew's ghost literally treads along textbooks to reach an elevator, metaphorically making his way up in the world. And when he reaches the top floor, he's rewarded with an illusion of a happy family. However, they are merely putting on masks. And wow, to think that some people humanized Mrs. Graves before this chapter came out. Any ambiguity about Renee's character has been obliterated. 3A makes it crystal clear without any room for further debate that she wasn't neglectful by accident, but a consciously abusive mother. She'd scream and swear and terrify Andrew such that she didn't even have a clear human face in his memories. And so the dream sequence gives way to one such memory, a soul-crushing weekend where Renee broke her son's spirit for her own convenience. Andrew was constantly barked at, constantly humiliated, and constantly held to impossible standards. Andrew must micromanage his sister, premeditate her chaos, and never, ever let her slip from his mind. Andrew is a case of extreme parentification at a very young age, and this was by design. Renee never cared one whit about child rearing and would prefer to be miles away from her children's needs, as if raising them through a telescope. At least Douglas was a somewhat cognizant father, if an absent one. The only reason Renee went forwards with 2 teenage pregnancies was out of pride, to prove she could be a better mother than her own, and yet she refused to prove this herself. It was Andrew's job to make sure her latchkey kids turned out okay. And when he felt suffocated by Ashley, when he needed help for the expectations placed on him, when he needed his mother to be a mother for once, she simply told him, that's just how it is when you have a sibling. The audacity of her to say this with a smile, despite cutting off her own siblings. I love how much I fucking hate her. And thus, Andrew submitted. and Andy was born. Though he was a small boy woefully under-equipped to be an effective role model, he had to do it because he was so desperate to be good and too scared to say no that he traded away his childhood for duty. That is trauma. Make no mistake about it. Andrew's childhood trauma began long before Nina's manslaughter. There's a reason his mental image of home was one of chains. I think it's clever then how this vignette begins with Andrew giddily reading his perfect test scores and ends with Andy receiving mediocre marks entirely unfazed. After all, what's the point if it doesn't help Leyley? Leyley, 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 and Leyley. Always Leyley, but never Ashley. Always the cross to bear. Always his project. So when we finally return to the present, Andrew isn't just pissed from where episode 2 left off. He's emotionally anchored to a lifetime of paternalism. All the while, Ashley is haunted by a terrible vision of Andrew killing her. But whether Andrew might harm Ashley is almost besides the point, as we'll find that 3A is really about the fact he already has. And so Decay's story branches out largely based on how Ashley processes her episode 2 vision. In fact, the roots diverge as far back as episode 2 with differing versions of that vision. Did she see herself shooting Andrew in self-defense? Or did she see herself succumb to his blade? In both cases, Ashley's mission in 3A is to stop the vision from coming true no matter the cost. Yet the shoot route and the cliffhanger route, as it's commonly called, take completely different paths. And it all starts with which lessons she learns from the respective vision. In the shoot route, Ashley kicks off with a sense of bravado, knowing that self-defense is an option, making her less cooperative and more confidently combative, all the way from snark to intentionally going off Andrew's script. It's a power trip, and one that will test Andrew's patience. In the cliffhanger route, however, Ashley is frightened. There is no sense of security here. She witnessed herself fail to resist her own execution. In this route, she's not scared of death, but the possibility of being sentenced to it, because Andrew is effectively God. As such, Ashley learns that actions have consequences. But which actions? She doesn't know. That's why she enters this route less confident, trying harder to do what she thinks Andrew would like. And a very underrated detail is how this is reflected even before the routes properly diverge. While the camping incident is where the split becomes obvious, there's still subtle differences even before then with some of the dialogue and artwork. Notably, in the cliffhanger route, Ashley is being less cocky and Andrew is getting less agitated. It makes perfect sense then why the cliffhanger route shapes up as the more constructive one for their relationship. Ashley's behaviour, if for a moment, isn't affirming Andrew's victim complex, and in turn he's able to self-regulate a bit better. But while the cliffhanger siblings seem closer than ever, this stability is built on shaky ground because Andrew is still a delusional control freak. Don't get me wrong, Ashley has a lot of problems, but Andrew was only in the right headspace to start a dialogue with her because she had yielded to him, thus making him feel secure and rewarded in his role as her keeper. It's the role he was given during childhood, yet remains the lens he contextualizes everything through. One of the most honest things Andrew's ever said is that he doesn't mind being her stand-in mother or father, but the full story is that he needs her to be his dependent, and he feels empty and unvalidated when he can't control the narrative. Throughout their lives, Andrew has inadvertently taught Ashley to be helpless, from doing her homework for her, to insisting that she just couldn't survive if he went to jail, to enabling her stupid meltdowns with hugs and kisses. Plus, all his indecisiveness and dishonesty have a tendency to destabilize Ashley, which only reinforces his belief that she needs his administration. And it's quite sad because none of this is intentional, and when this dynamic ultimately gets him what he wants, he hardly has any incentive to modify his behaviour. And if you want to talk about controlling the narrative, how about literally controlling the narrative when Andrew directs his own play? In the Dreamworld Theatre, there's a puzzle where Andrew picks the cast for his autobiographical play, and there's many different Ashleys to choose from. Some are nice, some are extremely interested in microbiology, but one is an unappreciative brat who will give Andrew the leech his ego needs. None of these Ashleys are necessarily false. In fact, they're very real aspects of her. Yet there's only one correct solution to this puzzle because Andrew will always gravitate towards the caricature that justifies his fiction. The player can even kill the other Ashleys, a very raw representation of his inability to accept any part of her personality that contradicts his narrative. And that inability is cleanly demonstrated by another scene in the cliffhanger route. There's a moment where Ashley makes Andrew sleep outside because he's being an insufferable asshole, and at first, Andrew is actually proud of her for it, because instead of facing adversity via Leyley, she stood her ground as Ashley and told him to piss off. Yeah, he just got kicked out, but he recognizes that she's grown up a little and isn't hiding behind bullshit roles anymore. But unfortunately, he is. Almost immediately, Andrew's brain backpedals as he reminds himself that Ashley's not supposed to be competent. She had just set a boundary, yet Andrew's only conclusion is that he needs to start setting them for her. In the same way he slaughters the miscast Ashleys in the dream, he'll just as easily ignore blatant reality. And this is why I love 3A's puzzles so much, because many of the solutions are themselves symbolism, which is absolutely genius because this is integrating storytelling into the very gameplay. Nemley's not content to merely tell us that Andrew projects onto Ashley. No, to solve these puzzles we need to think like him, to go through the same rationalizations he does, so that we intimately understand how he sees Ashley, how he sees himself, and what he'll do to preserve his mental house of cards. And preserving that is a difficult task indeed when he's always got one unrelenting current running through his mind. Anyone who called Burial the incest route has been humbled by episode 3A. Every route is the incest route. Incest is an inevitability for the siblings, and Decay makes that clear by being a testament to Andrew's lovesick mental breakdown. And really, this should come as no surprise. I thought it was clear from episode 2 that Decay was always gonna have romantic angst. I mean, one of the biggest reasons Andrew resents himself is that he cannot stow this desire he has for his sister. We see over and over again that Andrew tolerates a high degree of physical contact with Ashley and actively seeks out sexual validation from her. His delusion of normalcy manages to withstand all this because their compromising positions are technically platonic, theoretically not foreplay. But Ashley's not a fool, and she can tell Andrew is trying to secretly extract erotic stimuli from her, and she definitely doesn't feel dignified being used like that. Look, I'm not even saying you can't innocently share a bed with a sibling, though I am saying Andrew can't. The tragedy is that Andrew never meaningfully processed these feelings. He just denied, but running away only let it fester into a deep obsession that hurt him and the people around him. That is in large part his fault, but perhaps his upbringing condemned him to never have a healthy sexual development. See, Andrew's puberty didn't happen in a vacuum, but amidst an existing lifelong entanglement with his sister. Douglas and Renee were so unavailable as parents that the siblings were forced to be a single unit with no individuation or boundaries, and as Ashley's steward, every thought, emotion, feeling, and development Andrew's ever had were wired to have her as the foundation. So once her body started changing, that too would become an investment of his. Andrew's sexual awakening was just never going to be separated from his codependency with Ashley, and when a schoolyard bully started joking about Andrew shagging his sister, it finally dawned on him that, yeah, maybe he does feel funny things about her. So he corrected the record in the only way he knew how. Remember that Renee instilled in wee Andy the idea that appearances matter above all else. After all, his role as a child was to insulate his mother from the struggles of parenting so she could pretend she was doing a good job. So once lewd rumors started spreading on campus about the siblings, Andrew followed his mother's playbook and embarked on proving to the world, and most of all to himself, that he doesn't have the hots for his sister, culminating in a superficial and horribly manipulative relationship with Julia. And I feel so bad for that girl. Even in episode 2, we saw Andrew dangling Nina's death over Julia's head to make her shut up about Ashley. But 3A has shown every last naysayer that Andrew saw her as nothing more than a predictable algorithm. Andrew didn't love Julia. Hell, he didn't even like her in any sense of the word, and the wedding minigame makes that brutally obvious. If you wed Andrew and Julia, he's not even looking at the bride, and only she has a love heart over her head. Meanwhile, if you wed the siblings, they're facing each other directly with matching hearts. More than depicting his feelings, this also reflects his actual behaviour with how often he bailed on Julia. Although Andrew wanted more than anything to be normal, he also wanted Ashley more than anything and would much rather spend time with her. So whenever he cancelled his dates with Julia, the convenient explanation wasn't that he desired Ashley, but that his psycho-tyrannical sister was forcing him to cancel. This shielded him from his incestuous insecurities without ever having to ask himself why he kept choosing Ashley. As for the dates he didn't cancel, Ashley was on his mind the entire time, and the year the siblings spent separated clearly took a toll on him. And seeing as Andrew's mental image of Julia is just a dullard spouting worthless gibberish, it's no wonder he was always shushing her. Not just because he found her boring, but because the silence would let him pretend he's banging his sister instead. And would you look at that? Julia's on her knees with her hair tied up exactly like Ashley's. And if you still think the hair is just Andrew having a thing for ponytails, consider this flashback from after one of their arguments. Andrew butters Julia up by telling her all these sweet things, except none of them make any sense in the context of their relationship. There's nothing to forgive because Julia is totally innocent. Beloved is a word Andrew uses a lot, just never to Julia. My own piece of work would describe a more paternalistic relationship of his, and as much as Andrew dislikes Julia, she doesn't frustrate him. He is utterly apathetic to her beyond functioning as his beard. But the contradictions are the point. Julia may be the one in the room, but he ain't talking to Julia. And the moment Julia tries to say she loves him, he instantly shuts her up for breaking his immersion. And this scene actually echoes an earlier one where Andrew makes Ashley listen to him have a phone call with Julia. Once more, Andrew tells her all kinds of sweet things, but again, Julia may be on the other end of the line, but he ain't talking to Julia. What completes this phone call is when he admits that each time he chose Ashley, he left that other, ugly half-wit to sit home and cry, knowing damn well she'd cry every time. And that's just sick! He didn't even care how much he was hurting Julia, as he was very knowingly making a fool of her. Not to mention, this is a confession that he didn't even find Julia physically attractive. He felt absolutely nothing for her. Andrew was for all intents and purposes dating his sister from the very start, and Julia was just the body double that let him pretend otherwise. Nothing proves this more than the fact that Andrew's own mother didn't know he had a girlfriend until years later, and that's because she never heard the schoolyard rumors, so Andrew didn't feel the need to show his plausible deniability to her. It's almost poetic then that Andrew jumped at Julia in high school. The meek, traumatized girl whose grief he caused by killing her best friend and whose resulting vulnerability made her easy pickings. He spent years lying to Julia, guilt-tripping her, derailing her every concern, using her, and constantly abandoning her when she of all people could really fucking use a person in her life that doesn't disappear. From Nina's death to being strung along by Andrew, every aspect of her character is a victim of him. And sadly, Ashley didn't fare much better. In some ways, Ashley is the opposite of Andrew, for better and for worse. Ashley is an outcast who only ever wanted real human connections, yet has been let down by everyone apart from her brother. Andrew, on the other hand, is a chameleon who doesn't care for human connections. He never did think in human terms. Ashley is the main thing giving him humanity, since Andrew views everyone else as roles and labels and isn't afraid to use them accordingly. I know some people like to read Ashley as this emotionless girl boss who can only think about Andrew, but that's just not true. She was a needy child who craved her mother's non-existent love. Hell, even as an adult, she kept calling her mum during quarantine and felt deeply betrayed by her for selling them out. She can be emotionally invested in people other than Andrew, and she was so desperate for something from her mother that she even broke her blood oath with Andrew by confessing to Nina's killing. With this, she was eager for her to finally act at all like a concerned mother. And when she didn't, that crushed Ashley. She broke her secret pact with Andy to get attention from somebody she didn't even like, and got nothing. And yet, maybe this made Ashley realise she needs to be better than the Blood Oath. She didn't want to be the burden that Mother placed on Andrew. So by high school, she's largely on her best behaviour, and from the outset, her relationship with Andrew looks pretty stable. Really, it doesn't seem overtly transactional, it doesn't seem combative, and Ashley even has some capacity to function without Andrew. The most visible crack was that her friends could tell she didn't actually like them, but to Andrew that might have actually been a bit relieving. This was of course around the time Andrew's paternalism started evolving into something more passionate, more possessive. He liked being Ashley's emotional world, no matter what he said. He was even about to pull a Leyley and sabotage Ashley's date. He only stopped because she already came home having stood the bastard up. Ashley accepted the invitation out of peer pressure, but she wasn't interested in the guy. And unlike her brother, she doesn't believe in faking it. Which is funny because despite Ashley writing the douchebag off, Andrew still made him a central character in his play because he made Andrew realise something important. It's just like the play says, the douchebag's discernment guides the way. He correctly discerned that Andrew wanted to pork his sister, and through smack talk and spreading rumours, he made Andrew conscious of these feelings. Now, I've spoken in my videos about Coffin's flexible art style, and the range is still fantastic with nearly 1,000 pieces of cutscene art as of episode 3A. And we see this range when Andrew overhears the douchebag's irreverent comments. Andrew transforms from this round and cutesy style to this more defined and realistic look. This style was introduced in episode 2 and has been used for decisive moments when a character realises that things ain't gonna be the same anymore. In this case, it's Andrew recognising how he feels towards Ashley. Obviously, I love the symbolism in Coffin, and luckily for me, the dream world's about to get a whole lot weirder and way more abstract. Seriously, half of 3A is like End of Ava. I live for this stuff. So bear with me and I'll make it make sense, because what we've got here is bloody genius. If the play is how Andrew dramatises getting called out, then this dream is about how he pathologises his incestuous desires. We've got an island floating in a void and it's clearly shaped like a phallus. This island is Andrew's sex drive. The player's objective is to plant some sunflowers, Julia, and water them till they grow. But every time you tend to the sunflowers, pink flowers rapidly spread across the screen like a weed, overwhelming the sunflowers until they wilt. Pink is of course Ashley's trademark, so this is a simple enough metaphor for Andrew yearning after Ashley, and how this overpowers the labour he invests into Julia. Where it gets less simple is the bloodstained tarp and the tombstone. And if you're thinking this is about Nina's death, you'd be right. Andrew feels the Nina incident marked the point of no return that irreversibly locked the siblings together, thus making incestuous feelings emotionally inevitable. At the same time, look at the bloodied blanket. Ostensibly, it represents Nina's blood on his hands and the tarp he hid her corpse in, but in turn, I think it also symbolises Andrew's first time with Julia, an opportunity granted to him by Julia's insecurities, of which we know the root cause. Hence, Nina's tombstone is planted on the glands. Her death is quite literally at the head of both parts of his love life. Obviously, this apparent love triangle was a betrayal to Ashley. Julia was already a symbol of Ashley's humiliation given she never really connected with her, so when she found out that's who was seeing her brother, she went ballistic. If you've seen my Blood Oath video, then you'll know that wee Andy couldn't fix his sister's poor self-esteem, but he could play by its rules. Since she wouldn't believe in his genuine loyalty, he dressed that loyalty up as a contractual obligation. And though this persuaded her that she'll be his #1 priority, the transactional framing was never going to be good for her confidence, and this fact had finally caught up with him. So, Andrew did two things. First, he reminded Ashley that Julia was just a goomar, a side bitch. The point is, he was still her Andy, and as we well know, he repeatedly proved that to her. But second and more importantly, he lifted her spirits where the Blood Oath failed to. Her happiness couldn't just be a matter of terms and conditions. He needed to let her know she was important to him and that his loyalty to her was his decision. And it worked! That was nuclear validation for her, and this was genuinely a good start. Yes, she was still his dependent, and yes, Andy is not a healthy fantasy, but with that sense of security re-established, her cosmic jealousy relaxed, at least outwardly. She may have even remained acquaintances with Julia for a long time, which is almost unthinkable, and she was actually able to set boundaries with Andrew. See, another popular misreading of Ashley is that she's a nympho obsessed with bedding her brother. But when Ashley thought Andrew might have been coming onto her, she basically told him that if he's already had emotionless sex with Julia, then forget about it, Tiger, because she didn't want to be another feather in his cap. And wow, honestly, none of that reeks of the desperation we expect from her. So what happened? What could have possibly turned her into the histrionic gremlin we've come to know? Andrew Graves in How to Lead Your Sister On. Step 1. Make her feel special. Completely ignore the girl you're seeing whenever your sister wants something, and be sure to sleep next to her every night. Totally platonically, of course. Step 2. Be a total flirt. Give her sweet talk you'd never give Julia. Oh, this stuff is just cute. Step 3. Stare longingly into her eyes. This is more than just teenage hormones, kid. Step 4. Wait for her to correctly read the room. Took her long enough, everyone else at school already knew you wanted to screw her. And last but not least, step 5. Run away immediately. Leave her alone with the shame to let her know she's not worth an explanation. By the end of this program, your sister should become a self-hating, unstable, paranoid git with confused boundaries and zero confidence. The exact sort which you claim prevents you from going official with Julia. When Ashley's biggest insecurity is feeling like she is a burden, you can see why Andrew's clearly romantic signals were so rewarding. And even though she was getting butterflies in her stomach, I do believe the tower scene, hold that thought for a moment, shows that she could have made peace with Andrew just saying something instead of running away. On the surface, Andrew's exit here looks like he was being a responsible sibling setting a boundary. In reality, it was him panicking because Ashley knew his secret. His mask slipped, and when she noticed and reciprocated, he left her there alone, convinced she was the freak, that she had crossed lines, and that she doesn't even deserve an explanation. Ashley had been trying to change, and right when she finally felt like she wasn't a burden to him anymore, silence was the only reward. Ashley learnt she wasn't better than the Blood Oath. She learnt this is a world of conditional love where she can't be taken seriously or trusted. All she had left was the knowledge that Leyley was right about everything. This whiplash explains so much about her behaviour in the present, as it solidified every wrong lesson from her childhood. It's almost certainly the reason she dropped out of high school, and it's no wonder she became a tarsehole. The incident also made her very sexually repressed, which ironically made her more outwardly feisty. On the inside, she's internalized the idea that love is supposed to be a transaction, but on the outside, that very dissociation encourages her to use sex appeal as a tool. Hell, her long-term survival plan coming into the cliffhanger route was to just prostitute herself to Andrew, because she thought her trinket and her body were all she could offer. And that framing is the issue. Offerings. The belief that she's so unlikable that she must bargain or coerce her way to Andrew's attention. You can see then why she gets along with the demon. The demon is purely transactional and purely about power. It speaks Leyley's language fluently, hence it feels safe to her in a way Andrew's mixed signals don't. Given this demon mirrors Leyleyism, it's curious that it also employs Ashley as a literal soul-sucking parasite and directly attempts to turn Ashley against Andrew. Now that's an allegory. But while she isn't overtly acting like Leyley anymore, the underlying anxieties that produce Leyley are still unresolved. Take the kisses for example. The first kiss at the tower was an emotional breakthrough for the both of them, complete with triumphant hugs and laughter and Ashley finally feeling genuinely secure. But the second kiss just perplexed her, because instead of reassurance, she was left wondering whether this is just something Andrew does now out of pity or appeasement. That second kiss fell flat in a way Quarantine didn't. Ashley was emotionally steady for most of episode 1 because lockdown guaranteed Andrew's presence. She is capable of stability, but that stability has to be externally imposed. Failing that, the result is a cycle of Ashley not trusting Andrew, which leads to Andrew not trusting her, which leads to her not trusting him. This of course brings us back to Andrew, as he too has his demons, figurative and literal. It's telling that Andrew now calls Ashley beloved when he's upset at her, while conversely calling her Nightmare when he's endeared to her. As cute a nickname as Nightmare is, the distinction shows that Andrew is endeared to the idea of Ashley as something to manage. He doesn't really understand the concept of an equal relationship, and Julia even pointed this out to him. Although Andrew yearns to get closer to the real Ashley, not Leyley, Ashley, he keeps treating her as a porcelain doll. While this habit may be partially fetishistic, it's also because Andrew's just been cautious of her intentions ever since the childhood blackmail. Nina's death is their ultimate secret, yet Ashley used it against him. So he can't trust her. But most of all, he can't trust himself. Which is where Lord Unknown comes in. The final hour and a half of the cliffhanger route is an astounding artistic achievement, and even by itself would be Nemley's magnum opus. It's the demonic therapy session Andrew's been avoiding his entire life, and it so perfectly deconstructs him that it almost makes any analysis redundant. Lord Unknown peers through his every memory, every rationalization, every lie, every coping mechanism, and lays bare the truth such that Andrew can no longer deny it. And I love the twisted dreamscapes that make up much of this expose. A lot of what you've already been seeing in this video is from this sequence, and there's yet more layers to peel. Take for instance the hub world of Andrew's subconscious. Fittingly, Ashley's motif is visible in the sky, a moon and stars. That motif is omnipresent throughout the game, but this time they're drawn differently. Rather than the usual crescent moon, we've got a full moon with a curious spot in the middle. At first I thought it was meant to be a nipple on a breast, eroticizing her motif and her by extension. He'd certainly know what her breasts look like too, since it's revealed he's a peeping Tom. However, I now think the spot is more likely the nucleus of an ovum, because look at the stars. Instead of the usual cartoony stars, this time there are star clusters consisting of small specks, microscopic even. You can probably surmise what I'm getting at. What this suggests is that Andrew has a deep, primal need for his sister, which is corroborated by some of his intrusive thoughts. The wedding minigame I discussed earlier is indeed one of the vignettes in Andrew's interrogation, but what I didn't mention the first time was the pink bunny. The pink bunny starts out innocently watching cartoons on TV, but in order to wed the siblings, you have to savagely and bloodily kill the pink bunny. This death of Leyley seems to mark Ashley becoming a woman, hence the TV now displays not cartoons, but porn. Even the music slows down as if to be more sensual. This shows that Andrew viewed her as his cute baby sister until one day he didn't. But if equating Ashley to pornography doesn't objectify her, this vision from earlier in the chapter does. Mind you, this particular dream shows up in all of 3A's routes, not just Cliffhanger, but I'll examine it here because it is bathed in ideas of sexual ownership. Ashley's dismembered corpse lay torn apart on a bed with no legs to run away, no arms to fight back, and no head to blabber and be difficult. And you can bet the blood on the mattress denotes Ashley's virginity, gratuitously extracted. I really hope this vision is just a metaphor and not a literal clairvoyance, but either way, this is what Andrew's pent-up longing will eventually reduce Ashley to. A torso with tits to oogle at and a hull to fuck. But with Lord Unknown's examination, Andrew also realizes the extent to which he's poisoned Ashley's development. His cowardice rewards her vices, his ego cripples her individuality, and he's devolved into such derangement that he can excuse all of his killings as mere collateral in his quest to spoil Ashley. He messed her up and ruined his own life in the process. and yet it's still easy to sympathize with his breakdown. He was a kid forced into adulthood so fast that he confused repression for maturity. He was so thoroughly ingrained with the art of making appearances that he mistook ignorance for progress. And above all, he just wanted to be there for Ashley. Andrew was no more independent a child than Ashley. Just because he didn't cry like Ashley doesn't mean his needs were met. There's no such thing as easy children, only easy to ignore children. Andrew's victim narrative hits people so hard because it makes sense. But while his upbringing explains why he's like this, it doesn't explain why he remains like this. And so the eponymous cliffhanger is Andrew's unrestrained id. He relishes in sadistic violence against those who defy him. And with his composure on its last legs, Andrew contemplates just taking what he wants and molesting Ashley. This power fantasy lapses as he realizes he could just ask Ashley for sex. But he fears that could be even worse, because he knows she wouldn't refuse even if she wanted to. She cannot credibly prove it romantic. Andrew is stuck to deal with his uncommunicable love alone. Yet in his nervous breakdown, Lord Unknown shows Andrew the first taste of parental warmth he's ever known. Suddenly, Andrew no longer notices the weight on his shoulders. So he hears Lord Unknown's offer. He shall take away Andrew's feelings for Ashley in exchange for working with him. And of course Andrew's seduced. Right as he finally admits the truth about himself, Lord Unknown dangles an escape in front of him. It's comforting to think that everything would be fixed if he didn't have this one flaw. That if he could just run away from his incestuous desires, he'd be normal. But it's a lie, and accepting this deal would cement the worst possible version of Andrew. Somebody committed to never accepting reality, now deprived of the one thing grounding him. And this is why Andrew's relationship with Lord Unknown is such a great parallel to Ashley's relationship with her demon. Just as Ashley's insecurities align her with that entity, Lord Unknown appeals to Andrew's desperate search for absolution. Lord Unknown even happens to be something Andrew accidentally summoned as a child, something which, by the time he finally faced it as an adult, had festered into a behemoth that can no longer be summoned to the human realm. It's the perfect analogy for Andrew's mountain of accumulated issues. Overall, this is an extremely satisfying cliffhanger. Well done, Ley. You never should have doubted yourself. This is a moment the entire game has been building up to, and as a cliffhanger it lands even more beautifully thanks to some poetic irony. This route began with Ashley's vulnerability, and now Andrew himself is being patently manipulated. I can't wait to learn more about Lord Unknown, and I can't wait to see what solutions the siblings will find as the wedge between them grows. They did split on bad terms, and Lord Unknown is going to complicate that. But for all the cliffhanger route's uncertainty, it's outright optimistic compared to the shoot route. This is the final, grinding end of the graves, where every last shred of goodwill is burnt alive and paraded. Cliffhanger may have been artful in its surrealism, but shoot doesn't aim to dazzle you. Where the cliffhanger route explores Andrew running from his problems, the shoot route makes it clear what he actually wants from Ashley. And it's a hunger more total than the desire for food, for safety, or for sex. We return to episode 2's Decay ending, this time the variant where Ashley's vision sees her shooting Andrew in self-defense. Ironically, her witnessing this vision directly causes Andrew's attempt at murder-suicide, because as much as Ashley detests the idea of killing him and ultimately can't even bring herself to do it, the mere possibility gives her an illusion of control, which she naturally exploits. Ashley gets drunk on power she doesn't have, and Andrew snaps. This shot of Andrew declaring that Ashley owes it to him to die with him is honestly scary. And indeed, if the player catches up to the fleeing Ashley, Andrew will kill her. Yet there's just something uncanny about how it's depicted. I could gush all day about Ley's artwork, but I need to single out this particular piece when Andrew executes Ashley, because it's different from anything else in the game. Ashley's lifeless face, eyes wide open, staring into nothing, mouth slightly agape, looks oddly beautiful compared to how she's usually drawn. Ashley's cheekbones are more realistically defined, her eyes are full for once, and there's perspective-correct facial symmetry. Characters have been drawn from similar angles plenty of times, but they've never been this three-dimensional, and it's haunting that she looks so immaculate here. Perhaps this is meant to tell us that she didn't die as the wicked Leyley. That's just what Andrew projects onto her. That has been a repeating pattern throughout the game, and if she survives, the rest of the shoot route is spent incubating that projection into reality. The Graves find themselves secluded in an apartment, kinda like episode 1, but unlike episode 1, the characters regress. Every so often there are glimmers of how things could be, when they share these cute moments where everything is okay and you're reminded of why their chemistry was always so endearing. But it never lasts. Even a playful discussion about buying something as mundane as a vacuum cleaner eventually breaks down into melancholy. Their resigned agreement that such amenities are too good for them makes me feel sorry every time. As with many of their problems, this gloominess sustains itself through their dangerously compatible insecurities. Ashley pours everything into holding them together, even if she's doubtful it can truly work. She got him out of trouble with the demon, she found him shelter, and she buys him tobacco, all because she wants him around and doesn't even blame him for trying to kill her. Andrew, meanwhile, is just too ashamed of himself to carry on strong at this point, and above all, he's always found it easier to put up with Leyley than to accept Ashley. Which begs the question, what fundamentally is Leyley? There's clearly an element of arrested development on Ashley's part, particularly nostalgia for Andy as the idyllic older brother who unconditionally spoils her. Nevertheless, at times it seems like Leyley is more of a tool Ashley uses to lock herself away from her pain. It's very bittersweet, but no matter how hectic the Andy and Leyley dynamic is, in her mind it was meant to be the way to achieve stability and therefore make Andrew happy. She's even caught by surprise to learn that Andrew wasn't happy as kids. Given that, you'd think Andrew categorically despises Leyley, and he does, but Leyley is much more than Ashley's escapist fantasy. Leyley is Andrew's mirror. Andrew himself admits his only respite in life comes from Ashley seeing how awful he is and smiling right back at him like there's nothing wrong. Leyley is therefore the version of Ashley that is primed to welcome his vices or even bear the blame for them. I'd argue that Andrew's descent into alcoholism in this route is just a proxy for Leyley, another way he can forget what he's become. Recognizing all this, Andrew also comes to the conclusion that his sister deserves better. Funnily, if you call the police, Andrew will try to turn himself in while covering for Ashley. Eventually he decides he needs to run away for her sake, which leads to the clumsiest ever attempt at getting back with your ex. Andrew went into this confident that as long as Ashley were out of the picture, Julia would just handily leap back into his arms, missing the fact that Ashley wasn't the problem, he was. Julia didn't dump Andrew because Ashley was bullying her, she dumped him because he let Ashley bully her. Julia didn't feel jealous of the amount of time Andrew spent with his sister, she felt betrayed because the time spent with her was fake. Julia even hands him a letter rebuking him as a heartless shell, and not once does she cite Ashley as the reason for this. Andrew's two choices, reading it with an indifferent reaction or tossing it in the bin immediately, both prove her right. In a stark reversal from episode 1, Andrew willingly crawls back to the apartment because he wants the coffin, and it's in this epiphany that Andrew finally crosses a line he's been avoiding for years. Now, Ashley's face makes it clear. The blush, the glances, she liked it, and not in a cutesy way. So she escalates it into a decidedly adult embrace. Make no mistake, this is Ashley in earnest. But then Andrew pulls away, giving her that same old whiplash from years ago. He initiates, she responds, he retreats, thus creating a pretext for Leyley. Or at least he thinks Leyley is the one in the room. Ashley herself mostly drops the Andy and Leyley stuff after hearing how unhappy Andrew's childhood really was. Yet Andrew is the one continuing to address her as Leyley throughout. Later on, when she finds out Andrew had met with Julia, even her subsequent meltdown isn't necessarily Leyleyan because Andrew was in fact withholding information from her. Like it or not, the siblings are effectively a couple, and Andrew had just shown her that he has has ulterior motives in meeting other women. Of course, her demand that he kill Julia for her is less rational, though the fact he seriously considers it for a moment speaks for itself. Yet for the first time in a long time, Andrew handles it properly and calls her bluff. He doesn't cave. And it works. Ashley quiets down, realizing that she's being a little shit. But Andrew is rarely satisfied with calling Leyley's bluff. This has to continue. He keeps bitching, trying to put her in her place long after she's already faced the music. And that's what changes everything, as she makes it clear to him that this is Ashley speaking. With moral precision, she calls him out as an egotistical, lying, violent opportunist who only feels safe when she's beneath him. And she's right. She said to his face what Lord Unknown would have to pry out of him. And when her slap punctures the hierarchy he's built for himself, Andrew shows her exactly how right she is. Over and over and over again. People often forget that this is a game about a codependency. Emphasis on co. Andrew has benefited from his sister's instability since the original episode, yet the lie of victimhood persisted. Andrew's need for control has been a powder keg since the original episode, yet the lie of victimhood persisted. For all of Andrew's sins, for all of his hypocrisy, the popular imagination of this game remained one of Ashley being the engine of their problems. And I believe that illusion was intentional. Leyley crafted two of the greatest unreliable narrators in the history of video games through Ashley's self-hatred and Andrew's elaborate mask, such that I've never seen this many people confused about who the villain of a game is meant to be. Do not kid yourself. Andrew is worse than Ashley. Much worse. Neither of them are innocent. Ashley herself is violent, she catastrophizes, she acts on impulse and levies enormous expectations on Andrew. But Andrew is by far the biggest contributor to their destructive cycles. Ironically, anybody dismissing Coffin as the incest game has proven the effectiveness of Andrew's facade, because by putting so much weight on the taboo itself, Andrew constructs a world where he's the victim of a tragic desire he never asked for. Andrew subsists on the belief that he has a moral compass because he hasn't consummated with his sister, and he pretends that said consummation would be the ultimate surrender of his morals and his final ego death. But at no point in the game is incest what's wrong here. Andrew didn't brutalize Ashley because of their blood relation, just as it isn't the reason he abused Julia or looked forwards to murdering a small boy. Ashley is reduced to apologizing and proclaiming herself the problem. Andrew beat whatever witty, charming woman there was out of her until only Leyley remained, and it is perhaps precisely because of this that after stumbling her way off the ground, she tells Andrew she still loves him. Anybody else who had committed such a vile act would have fallen apart hearing those words. But not Andrew, who excuses himself to get drunk. And that's when we see Andrew's only unique dream in the shoot route. The first room is a pretty straightforward condensation of everything that's happened in this apartment. A towering Ashley lords over him, smiling as he is chained, yet she becomes more upset as she loses her grip over him, eventually shedding tears of blood. The second room, however, says more about these characters. As Andrew navigates this room, every misstep causes a giant fork to fall from the sky and splatter him. It's a callback to their earlier dinner scene, Ashley pressing a fork against his chin and declaring that Leyley is all he'll get. That itself was a reprise of a scene from episode 2, where he told her that Andrew is all she'll get. That these forks are from the dinner he prepared signifies Andrew's awareness that Leyley is here to stay, and that his mistakes unwittingly made that happen. When the drunk bastard awakes, Ashley enters the room and crawls up next to him. He leans in to kiss her again, and withdraws again. Now that's at least the third time he's let her on. Just having been beaten within an inch of her life, she's barely survived multiple visions of Andrew trying to kill her, and now he pulls this? What reason does she have to trust his commitment? She only has one bargaining chip left: her body. Andrew knows it isn't romantic when he's this drunk and she's guilt-tripping him. He knows she doesn't want this because she's trying to pacify him out of fear. He wants to hold Ashley, not Leyley. He's held back for so long because he didn't want it to be predatory, but when we get a word-for-word replay of episode 1's opening, the preamble to Nina's death, it confirms that Andrew already made up his mind 20 years ago. He will always give Leyley what she wants. So he gives in. It wasn't sexy, it wasn't intimate, and it wasn't even angry. All he can take away from this is that he's checked off his bucket list, and with that, he's ready to check out. From here, Andrew faces a fork in the road, and it all comes down to a missable item. If the player discovered the wedding ring earlier in the chapter and Andrew decides to hold onto it here, he spends a long time trying to convince Leyley that she's better off without him and can thrive on her own. I like to imagine the ring reminded him of the happiness other people have and that Ashley deserves a chance at life, so he needs to know she could survive if he died. But when she insists otherwise, he begrudgingly takes her hand in marriage, fully aware that this will never be healthy. And Andrew proves it immediately. Right before leaving the apartment to look for someplace new, he asks to have sex again now that he's sober. And that look on her face says it all. She wants to say no, but she can't. She yields, with that dark gradient and grim expression being nothing short of horrifying. She doesn't want this, but she's terrified for her life otherwise. Andrew knows all that, but proceeds anyway. That's rape. Don't get me wrong, Ashley taking advantage of a drunken Andrew was also rape. But that was a matter of survival for her. She thought introducing sex was the only way to convince him not to kill her, and if this route is anything to go by, that deduction may have even been correct. And so this is where we are. Andrew broke her down into one of the whores and hussies and floozies she so reviles. Hence, their married life is awful. Ashley, who had once prided herself on good housekeeping, lets their apartment decay into a dump. Andrew, meanwhile, doubles down on alcoholism and regularly beats Ashley. Not to mention the emotionally distant sex they have. The only time there was any passion was the one night she got drunk, dulling her Leyley persona for a moment and showing an echo of the woman she used to be. It's also evident this flicker of genuine intimacy greatly upset Leyley as it undermined her strategy of keeping sex strictly transactional, which was her way to maintain some leverage over Andrew. But what if Andrew never found the ring, or just tossed it away? Then instead of sentimentality, he threatens her at gunpoint to get the hell away from him, for her own sake, and it's clear he means to shoot himself the moment she's gone. But she can't leave. She runs back to Andrew because she can't live without him. Desperately thinking of a way to ease Andrew's sorrows, she remembers what Andrew said last made him happy, and it was talking about romantically jumping off the balcony together back in episode 1. So she proposes they leap from the 7th floor window. I want to believe Andrew's first instinct was genuine, that he wanted her to run and live the life he took from her. But a switch flipped in him when she insisted on joining him in death. Maybe it was relief that everything was simply fate. The shot of them plummeting to their deaths makes me so angry. Andrew is smiling like it's the best day of his life. Ashley clings to him, but she's sad. She's frowning. She's scared. She says it herself that she doesn't even want to die, but she still loyally plummets to her doom, frightened, categorically not wanting this, and probably regretting it instantly, yet commits for no other reason than because Andrew welcomed it. She was always like this, even as far back as episode 1 when she suggested that Andrew simply kill her if he didn't want her around. She put up a front of enthusiasm prior to the jump because, as usual, she's putting on a Leyley brave face, but she ultimately dies as Ashley. Andrew got what he wanted. He got sex, he got a quote-unquote romantic death befitting this tragic lover, and above all, he got total dehumanizing possession of Ashley. And as he condemns her to a meaningless death, he has the most smug, self-satisfied face imaginable. To think that all the suffering of the shoot route is the consequence of Ashley having even the possibility of standing up for herself. It's just like Andrew said, the most dangerous part of a relationship is leaving it. Depending on player choice, both the cliffhanger and shoot routes can converge into the Andy route, where Andrew surrenders his dignity and humours Ashley's childish fantasy in full. As I said, Ashley's clung to her Andy and Leyley escapism in large part because she was unaware of the weight that had been on Andy's shoulders. But here, Andrew declares himself Andy and gives her a blank check to exercise all her worst impulses. If you thought she was a brat at the start of the shoot route, she's outright toying with Andy now, and when her stupidity eventually ruins everything just as it does in the shoot route, he doesn't explode into violence. He finds himself crying on the floor, asking why she thinks it's okay to hurt him. It's one of the moments in this episode where I genuinely felt sorry for him. Sadly, his breakdown fails to teach her compassion. He chose to be Andy, and ruining her Leyley high was yet another bout of whiplash. She is therefore resolved to humiliate him even further. Thus, Andrew spends the rest of his worthless existence rotting away in the demon realm, doing nothing of note, never defying Leyley, and never asserting himself. He's so emasculated that he even gets envious when Ashley refers to the demon as male. But what can he do about it? All he can do is pretend to be Andy for her happiness. But it isn't real happiness. Leyley is a coping mechanism. Somewhere inside her, Ashley is all alone in a confined space, simply allowing this shadow to subsume her. And when she asks if he's happy, he wears that same expression he put on all those years ago, reading a book to her after their mother put him in his place. This is the ego death of the siblings, where Andrew let both of them decompose because it was easier. Andrew is a liar who continually ruins his life to avoid facing reality, and he's a violent, deviant control freak to boot. Clearly, the common theme in Decay has been the moral decay of Andrew. In the cliffhanger route, Andrew believes that running away from accountability will let him finally do right by Ashley. In the shoot route, he abandons his fictions and lets out every ugly thing he's capable of. And in the Andy route, he effectively self-immolates. As different as the routes are, they still follow similar psychological through lines, whether it's the frequent allusions to marriage, Andrew accusing Ashley of not loving him, or even getting jealous of the demon. All the parallels across the routes demonstrate that some things do not simply change with circumstance. So after everything we've learnt throughout episode 3A, it raises the question as to whether the Graves can ever truly reconcile and whether Andrew even has a path to redemption. It's not an easy question. While it's clear Andrew craves obsessive control over Ashley, it's also clear he doesn't want to want that. And while Lord Unknown's solution is deeply regressive, his intervention also forced Andrew to confront the truth in a way he couldn't simply deflect with violence. What makes Andrew different from the archetypical manipulator and arguably more dangerous is that he isn't doing it intentionally. Andrew does feel shame. Andrew is somewhat self-aware. The issue is largely that he deceives himself and, in so doing, drags others into his twisted version of reality. I mean, one thing that's so subtle that it might not even be deliberate is that during the cliffhanger, Andrew imagines his sister as so uncooperative that she won't eat the food he prepared for her. And sure, she can be very ungrateful, but the food example directly contradicts Ashley downing a disgusting drink in episode 2 simply because it was a gift from Andrew. A calculating manipulator could at least theoretically be convinced that their methods are self-defeating, whereas fixing Andrew would require, truthfully, I don't know what. Given that things like the Andy route are feasible, Andrew's paranoia isn't completely unfounded. So these anxieties need to be resolved in a way that doesn't involve subjugating Ashley. And with episode 4 set to continue from the cliffhanger route, I suspect that getting rid of that damn demon trinket will play a big role in the siblings' growth. The trinket is basically just a reenactment of the Blood Oath, an external institution that provides trust and reliability on their behalf. And just like the Blood Oath, it comes at a cost. Before 3A, you could justify their choice of sacrifices, but now they're harvesting the souls of innocent people, and this has already gotten them into trouble. Hell, the visions humans themselves can do harm. In episode 2, Ashley's vision of Andrew killing her was, if nothing else, framed romantically. However, when Andrew finds out in 3A that Ashley is fated to shoot him, he suffers a narcissistic injury and makes no attempt at tenderness if he does kill her. The matter of soul colouring is also a key lore tidbit and one that'll presumably play a bigger role in future episodes. But even here, it tells us a lot about the characters. Soul colouring doesn't measure actual objective morality, but self-perception, perfectly fitting a story dealing with fragmented senses of self. It also explains why Ashley is a full-on tar soul. Everything in the world has communicated her worthlessness to her, and she's internalized all of it. It's no wonder then that she ruthlessly seeks power, because she's learnt all her life that the weak get abandoned or stuffed into crates, which, let's not forget, Ashley had nightmares about in episode 1. I won't say she necessarily feels guilty about Nina's death, but she certainly doesn't think it makes her a good person, and I doubt she blames Andrew for it either. Andrew, meanwhile, is a grime soul, somebody whose self-perception is confused. He knows something is wrong with him, yet he's got so many coping mechanisms that his ego manages to stay halfway afloat. Nonetheless, after attempting to kill Ashley in the shoot route, he becomes a tar soul, albeit an unhatched one. Whatever hatching entails, we don't yet know, but in this route, Andrew is keenly aware that he's a monster. Curiously, you know who else is an unhatched tar soul? Renee. As much as Andrew claims they're nothing alike, he and his mother are in truth analogues. They both have extremely defensive personalities, they're both manipulators, they're both massive liars who focus on appearances, both can only feel compassion for one person each, and since Renee is a dominatrix, they both sexualize violence. Andrew and his mother even share green eyes, so they quite literally see the world through a similar lens. On the other hand, Ashley, Douglas and Grandma Graves have pink eyes. They're the junior party who struggle to see the rot in their lover. Even after nearly being killed by him, Ashley still convinced herself that Andrew is a good person. I suppose she justifies his actions with her own apparent wickedness. Which leads me to Burial. With Decay being Andrew's deconstruction, I'm eager for Burial to be Ashley's. I truly want her to realise that she never had to ruin her life for Andrew's sake, that he was always going to obsessively choose her. And call it wishful thinking, but with Ashley seemingly mellowing out in Burial, I'd love nothing more than for her to have a moment of sobriety and levy all the same accusations she dealt him in the shoot route, only this time making it out in one piece. However, the demon mark on Andrew's hand might tempt her to revert to her old ways. Back in episode 2's burial route, Ashley specifically told the demon that Andrew's soul belongs to her, and so in both versions of the burial ending, some sort of hex appears on Andrew's palm. Decay has given us a bit more context to this, as the very same symbol appears in the Andy route. Does this imply ownership? Will she mistake ownership for comfort? Will this sense of security compel her to never change in Burial? Only time will tell.
The only respite Andrew finds is in his new victim complex. Andrew did choose to go through with it all. Andrew locked himself in the coffin, a subtly manipulative character. He's not giving her an escape or die together.
I realised something shortly after I played episode 2 for the first time, but I was waiting to reveal it for whenever I made a video about the final chapter. However, the outstanding quality of episode 3A demands an early confession. The Coffin of Andy and Leyley is my favourite game of all time. My whole life I've been arguing with myself about whether my favourite game is Final Fantasy VII or the original Halo. But in 2023, I got a clear answer, and it's no contest. I already fell in love when the original game came out in March that year, and overnight its ending became my favourite ending of any game, movie or book. Which is why, ever since Nemley announced episode 2, I've wondered, will episode 1's bittersweet, open ending impact new players the same way if, instead of fading to black, the adventure simply continues? After seeing the reaction to 3A though, I can rest easy knowing that the experience I had with episode 1 is the same experience so many people have now had with episode 3A. Coffin feels like it should be a genre-defining classic from the 90s that's already been part of our cultural canon for decades, so it's incredible to think that it's a game that's still in the works. It's so important and meaningful that it feels impossible that something like this hasn't already existed. There's plenty of games that explore guilt and countless villains with tragic backstories, but Andrew's character does something spectacular by highlighting in excruciating detail the everyday processes and rationalizations that can turn an abuse victim into an abuser. The signs were always there, and Nemley's hidden them so eloquently that only now does it seem like most people are noticing. Based on my audience statistics, I've been playing video games since before a lot of my viewers were even born, so take it from me when I say that we are witnessing history having played this game. As for episode 3A specifically, this 6-hour mega chapter is a triumph that has utterly spoilt us. The artwork is stunning, with an immense attention to detail in every little thing on screen. The puzzles are great fun and cleverly woven into the narrative. My pedigree is PS1 horror games, so I hope future chapters give us even more puzzles and make them even harder. And most of all, I love this profound literary achievement. It's a case study of epic proportions that swings you from endearing laughter to emotional devastation, and everything about it is perfect. I cherish these characters, I cherish this game, and I cannot thank Nemley and the rest of Kit 9 enough for bringing this experience to us. I'm sorry this video had to be a year in the making, but I hope you understand why it took me so long to find the right words. This is Dandy telling you why episode 3A of The Coffin of Andy and Leyley is dandy. Peace.